This is a video tutorial about animating figures in After Effects. This is going to be based off of the Photoshop demo that we did about separating a figure from its background. And in After Effects, what we're going to be doing is going to be taking that figure and animating it according to the parameters of the assignment. So remember, the assignment is actually to create moving illustrations that are on a vertical format similar to Instagram stories and Facebook stories, because that's often where you might see moving images or moving illustrations like this. So let's go ahead and start with a new composition. That composition by default is at a width 1920 by height of 1080, and that's the standard HD. But actually, all an Instagram story is the opposite. It's just the vertical version of that. So the width is going to be 1080, and the height is going to be 1920. The rest should be fine. Square pixels, frame rate. I'm going to keep the duration at 15 seconds because that is the maximum length of an Instagram story, and so that's a good maximum length for your moving illustrations to be in. And I'll leave the background color as black, and I'm going to say OK. So now I have a canvas or a composition, and this time it's vertical. All right. Now I want the composition that I worked with in Photoshop. And I actually did a couple of extra things to it, and I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that in and import it. I'm going to import the file. And I have Nebuchadnezzar arm and knee. I've actually separated his back arm and his back knee so I can make him crawl. I'm going to import this as a composition, and it's going to retain layer sizes. That means, of course, it's going to bring in all the layers separately as a singular composition. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to leave the layer options here as editable layer styles. So we're going to be able to continue to edit these styles. That's actually not a big deal. We're not really changing styles right now. But yeah, let's leave it at editable layer styles and say OK. And so what that's going to do is exactly what it did last time, is it brings in a second composition that's named similar to the actual file. And it also brings in all its assets. So I'm actually going to show you how we can work with these compositions and have like one inside of another. So here we have composition 1 already in the timeline, and that's the vertical element or the vertical canvas that's going to be for our story. But I'm going to actually double click on this new one, and that's actually this. This is the format in which the original painting was in. So let's go ahead and see how we can get good old Nebuchadnezzar and his craziness to crawl across the screen. So first you can see that we have his knee, arm, good old Neb, and the background. And right now the others are turned off. I can turn them on so you can see them. I'll even use the solo. So here's the knee. It's just the back knee. Here's the arm. Here's the Nebuchadnezzar. And here's background copy. Now right now it seems like a fine order, but I actually want to reorder them. Notice this knee. If I go into transform and I move its position, it is on top of that. It is on top of the other leg. Now when they are lined up, that looks fine. But spatially, that knee is behind the other knee, so it kind of makes sense that you will order your layers in a way that makes sense with it visually. So I'm going to take Nebuchadnezzar here and put him on top, then have the knee and arm, and then have the background. I'm actually going to turn off the background for now because I know we'll use it slightly differently later. So let's just work with these guys right here and see if we can make something happen. So as we did in the quick start exercise where we animated the Walt Disney Concert Hall, I want you to, I'm going to go ahead and add some keyframes to make the knee and the arm change. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first select the knee and the arm. Now remember, there's some shortcuts. So I'm going to go in and select P, and that's going to bring up position. So this is the position now is available on both of these. Now this whole sequence is 15 seconds long. So what I want to do is I want to add a keyframe every 3 seconds. So first I'm going to go ahead like we did before, and I'm going to select on the stopwatch, and that's going to create the keyframe. And then I want to move it forward. Now, as you're moving forward in the timeline, that can get a little soft and kind of hard to be precise. So what I'm going to do is actually, if you go up, actually here, let me turn on the spotlight so you can see a little better. I'm going to go over to this number right here. And if you type in plus 300, and why it's 00 is those are the frame rate seconds. Those are like the 29 frames per second. So it's basically 3 seconds, and if I press that and press return, it'll jump forward in the timeline 3 seconds. So that actually makes it really easy to be very systematic. So I'm going to add 2 keyframes. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to plus 3 seconds, add new keyframes, go up to the counter, plus 3 seconds, add keyframes, plus 3 seconds, return, add keyframes, and plus 3 seconds, add keyframes. Now actually it goes off just a little bit because, so I'm going to bring it back 1 frame, so it's 14:29, and add keyframes there. So now I actually have keyframes every 3 seconds, which is pretty great. Now, remember we have basically Nebuchadnezzar, which is the body, then we have the knee and the arm that are here. And so what I want to do is go ahead and animate the knee and the arm. So I'm going to start right here and go to the second keyframes, and I'm going to work with this position. Here's the knee. The first number is X, of course. The second is Y, and X is horizontal, Y is vertical, meaning you have to go to the mountain before you climb it. So X is always first. So I'm going to move this, and I can move this knee. I'm going to move it back. Looks like I'll move it back. I'm just going to do it visually. Excuse me. So I'm going to select this. It's at, I'll just round it to 650. I'm going to select this number and copy it. And I'm going to put this in on every other frame. I'm going to move forward, paste it, move forward, and paste it. And let's see what I've got. If I go back to the beginning here, I can. Now his knee is moving like he is crawling. Now let's go ahead and do that with his arm too. I'm going to move that to the next keyframe. I'm going to take this and move it forward, maybe 750, just for easy to remember. And then I'm going to skip to the next keyframe, and then skip to the next keyframe, 750, next keyframe, 750. So if I look at this now, I can bring this back here, and I can press play, and you can see that it is going to have his knees and arms move together. Okay, so that's pretty good. So that's actually not bad. Now what I want to do is actually have his whole body move as well. So this is going to introduce a new concept called parenting. And what you can do is, here when you have all these individual elements, you can actually give them a parent-child relationship. And that is over here in the columns. Now, I said in the first tutorial that these columns can appear and disappear. So let's just double-click or right-click on this column here and make sure that parent and link is showing. Mine's already showing. I just want to make sure yours is showing. So here, we're going to make sure that neb is the parent. So I'm going to do here, and I'm going to say none. Basically, it's the parent. If I go to knee, I can go here and I can say I want neb to be the parent. And if I go to arm here, I can go and say that neb is also the parent. So what this means is that anything I now do to the Nebuchadnezzar object is going to affect the other ones. So let's make that happen. I'm going to go to Nebuchadnezzar, and remember, I'm going to go to a shortcut of P for position. That'll make that come up really quickly. And I'm going to add a keyframe at the beginning and a keyframe at the end. And if I go back to the beginning keyframe, I'm going to move this X position back here. I'll have him kind of come on. And then if I go to the end position, I'm going to move him a little forward. I don't want him to go totally off the page, so I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, so let's see what happens. You can now see that when I play, the knee and the arm are still moving in relationship to Nebuchadnezzar, but because he is the parent object, they are moving with him. And so it looks as if he is crawling. Pretty cool. All right. Now, that's fine and all, but we've animated this guy in this environment, and we actually need to put him on a composition that's vertical. So let's go see how it looks to put one composition in another. So here we've done the Nebuchadnezzar composition. I'm going back to composition 1, which is the one that's shaped like the vertical phone. And what I can do is I can just go to this Nebuchadnezzar composition and bring it in and drop it into this more vertically oriented thing. And now this is all a singular unit. I can press play, and I can't individually control the parts here. I can go back to this and individually control the parts. But this is now embedded into one composition is embedded into the other, which I think is actually pretty cool. Now the thing is, we have this nice background that we aren't using, and I turned it off in the other one. So let's bring it in into this one. So I'm going to go down, and here are the parts. Here's the background. I'm going to drag that in. So the background is now below him, but since this is vertically oriented, I just want this to be a lot bigger. So I'm going to go into the background and go to Scale, shortcut S, and I'm just going to scale that up with no keyframe. You know, I could move it around a little bit. I actually like that there's kind of this like cave-like thing in the center. And I'm actually going to take Nebuchadnezzar and take him and just drag him down. Now, I kind of like that he's kind of pathetic because he's basically a power-hungry monster, and it's nice to watch him grovel. So I think we're actually kind of done. Let's see how this works. We can adjust it. I think that's actually pretty good. So I'm going to turn off my spotlight so you can see it. I think that looks pretty good. All right. Well, since this looks so good, I'm going to add one last trick, which I think is going to be something that you'll all be very interested in. And I'm going to go back to the Nebuchadnezzar layout composition so that we can have more control over. Anyway, you'll see where we're going. So if you'll notice in this animation, you know, it looks a little stiff. We have the back, we have his back leg and arm moving, but his front are not. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to do something to make at least his back leg work. So there are ways to animate parts of images as opposed to whole images. It's actually a pretty intuitive little tool. I'm going to turn back on my spotlight. This little guy, the Puppet Position Pin tool. And how this works is you select the layer that you want to use it on, and then you go to the pin tool and you just poke it on places where you want to put an anchor point. And what these are going to be is all individual anchor points that I can move basically independently. I'm going to start with these two and just show you what happens, and then I'll add a couple of more. So in order to make it work, as soon as I poked these on, you'll see that it added an effect. We talked a little bit about effects when we started this, the quick start with the Disney Concert Hall. In effects, there's now this puppet effect. I can open up the puppet effect, and inside there is the mesh. And inside that mesh, I know this is like a collapsing, ooh, where'd it go? Let's try that again. Oh, sorry, there it is. Okay, effects, puppet, mesh, and deform. And in deform, you see puppet pin 1 and puppet pin 2. I know this is a lot of things. I open up puppet pin 2, open up puppet pin 1, and these are, let's play with them. Okay, so puppet pin 2, let's play with it. I am moving the knee, and because there's nothing anchoring the top part of his body, it's kind of, the whole thing is moving. And if I move the bottom one, this is moving the hip. And because there's nothing anchoring the top part of that body, it's moving the whole thing. So kind of the secret is you actually need to add a couple of pins to hold things down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of pins right here. That's pin 3 and 4. We really don't need them. If you're really they're just holding things in place, you can add some more. But I think we're going to get desired effect from just pin 1 and 2. Oops. So I think we pretty much want to deal with this first pin, which is the knee. You know, I'm also going to add a pin to the ankle just to hold it in place. And let's see how this is going to work. All right. So I'm going to label this. Okay, I'll go down and which one is this? Okay, that's the knee. So I'm going to close puppet pin 1. I'm going to open puppet pin 7, which is the ankle. And so I'm going to basically do a quick animation. I'm going to use the keyframes that I used down here. So here's our first keyframe. So I'm going to add a keyframe for the ankle, and there's already a keyframe for this. So I'll leave them where they are now. I'm going to move forward to this next keyframe 3 seconds in, and I'll add 2 keyframes. This one right here, oops, sorry, that's getting lost. So this puppet here, I'm going to move it forward. So there's the knee. And actually, I'm going to add, like I did in the time frame, I'm going to do plus 30. And I'm going to add the same thing to the ankle, plus 30. So they move together. I'm going to go forward to the next I'll skip a keyframe, add some keyframes. Oops, I should go back. Sorry, this is getting a little tedious. I'll add some keyframes there and then move back forward. And I will add, I think I said 40, and I will add 40, and let's just see what we got. I may have been, and so here we go. You can see now that the back leg, because I've used the puppet tool, is also, I mean, the leg that is closest to us is also moving as well. There's kind of more of a crawling effect. I think I kind of messed that up, but you can see how that can be worked. So you can actually use the puppet tool to move individual parts of your image. That is an advanced technique, but I feel like it would be something that's very useful at this particular point. So let's go ahead and look at it. I'm going to go back to the composition. Because the composition just updates with whatever changes you make to the other composition, this should be pretty much ready to go with all the puppet manipulations. And there you go. I have a pretty creepy moving illustration. There you go. Looks good.